Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. Thank you for joining me today for our free Friday webinar, Confidence with Conflict. Usually, I know if you've been on these webinars before, you've seen Michelle. She is currently in the air on her way to Phoenix for a much-needed vacation. She's been on the road traveling and working for the last couple of months, so she is ready for a girls' weekend in Arizona. So I get to share with you guys the Everything Just Productive Conflict profile, and we're going to talk about our program, Confidence with Conflict. So thank you again for taking your time to join me. We had a good turnout for the first webinar. So here we go. WebEx. For those of you who are not familiar with WebEx, there are some controls that you need to be familiar with. And I lost my mouse. Here we go. You can zoom and show the full screen. To see my presentation, I don't have any videos today. And in the chat box, that's the most important thing. I really encourage you guys to help me out by using the chat box. And the chat box, there's a drop down so you can open it up. And then in the to field, make sure that you have all attendees in there so everybody can see your responses. I had people in the last webinar were very chatty, and I really appreciate that because that does help me out as I'm sitting here looking at my computer and going through the slideshow. Okay, so today we are going to talk about conflict. We're going to identify what causes unhealthy behavior, discover communication strategies when engaging in productive conflict, and then recognize conflict is essential for effective communication. The handouts that you have for today, Confidence with Conflict program description, and that is the program that we have put together based upon this profile. A brochure about everything just productive conflict. A sample Confidence with Conflict program handout. So the handout that says has a picture on it, Confidence with Conflict on it. It's a handout that we provide during the program. So it is a worksheet or workbook, and it makes the program very interactive and a good learning experience. And then what we're going to focus on today is a productive conflict profile sample that has Ruby Prescott's name on it. And then the 2018-2019 webinar flyer, please feel free to share that with other people in your office. We're going to start out with an opening thought. To be adult in relationship is not to be conflict-free, it's to resolve conflicts mindfully. So it's being an adult, we're always going to have conflict, and conflict is good. As we're going to talk about today, that conflict is needed and it can be productive. So understanding conflict. What is conflict? Well, I think you would agree with me. It occurs when what I want is different from what you want. And that's usually how conflict starts. So in your chat box, please type in, how do you feel about conflict and why? I'll give you a few minutes to do that, or a couple minutes. To me, conflict can be very stressful. It will increase my blood pressure, usually. It's uncomfortable. And sometimes conflict is learned. It's based upon uncomfortable, stressful. Yep. Thank you, Joan. Dara, hate it. Yep. We all hate conflict. But it can be, what we're going to talk about today is how we can not necessarily enjoy conflict, but understand it better and how to not hate it. Dread it because it's usually the same conflict over and over. Yeah. Let's see, John. It's uncomfortable to deal with, but usually clears the air on an issue and can lead to positive resolution. And that's right. And that's another thing that we're going to talk about. Causes anxiety, but it's sometimes necessary to get things moving forward. Yeah, thank you, Darla. And conflict can be learned, or the way you react to conflict can be learned based upon how you were brought up. Some people grew up with parents always fighting, and maybe things were thrown or doors slammed, voices raised, and that's how you learned about conflict. But that's not always the most productive, as you probably saw when you were little. And some people still act that way too. Okay, so why does a conflict occur? Misunderstandings. People don't understand what the other person is trying to say. Different priorities. So let's say my coworker on the team is more driven towards her own personal goals and moving up in the company than what the team priorities would be. So that can create conflict. Lack of time. So we need to make sure there's time to ask questions and to understand the other person and to share our priorities, or our team's priorities, or company's priorities, and then resolve the issue. Sorry, I'm not sure why that slide did that. What prevents us from managing conflict? Stubbornness. I know I can be stubborn sometimes. It's people who are stubborn, it's hard to talk to reasonably and to get them to understand your thoughts and feelings. Jealousy. Maybe they're jealous about your situation and they don't want to share how they feel, and so that can create conflict. Poor listening. You know, we say some people have selective listening. That could be part of it, or they just don't care. Some people on your team are just don't want to hear what your ideas or thoughts are. Personality clash. Some personalities do clash because we are all different, and that's okay. Different is good. Our world would be pretty boring if we were all the same. But it's being able to understand and accept that person for who they are. Biases. Maybe they look different, or it's a different, you don't like the way they dress, or they don't like the position that they're in, but don't let biases get in the way. And fear. I think fear is probably the biggest reason why we don't want to get into conflict and express how we feel, is because we're afraid. We're afraid of repercussions. What if I said that, you know, I have a great idea, I want to move this forward, but you're shot down by your boss. Your boss doesn't listen. So you're afraid of sharing your thoughts and ideas for being shut down. Unfortunately, what happens then when your employees will not share their thoughts and ideas, your company becomes stagnant and your employees will leave, because they do have ideas and they do have passion for what they're doing and may have a better way of doing something. So let them express how they feel or their ideas. Otherwise, there's a good chance that another company or another boss or manager will listen to them. Unhealthy ways of managing conflict. Being indirect and secretive. Like, you just beat around the bush or just don't want to share what you feel. Placing blame, pointing the finger. I know I've worked in a place before where there's different areas of the company, and we all rely on each other in production. Each department has its own purpose. And it's easy when something goes wrong to point the finger at another department or another person because their instructions weren't clear, or you didn't know you needed to tell them something. Attacking the person, not the problem. If you have a bias towards the person, you might attack them. Or if you're jealous about them, you're going to attack them and not the real issue. Sarcasm. It's easy to be sarcastic if you don't really want to be direct about something. Acting like a victim. Oh, poor me. It's not my fault. That kind of can go back to placing blame, but being the victim in a situation and trying to get that attention, that may not be necessary. Settling and letting something eat away at you. I'm guilty of this myself. I will just sit back and not say anything, and I will rehash the situation over and over in my head, and it just builds up until finally I blow up. And it may not be at the right time. It may be sometimes the timing's just not right. You don't know what the other person has been going through. Have they been having a bad day? Has something happened at their home life that you don't know about? So consider the timing when you're talking, and maybe in the middle of a meeting with the whole team around is not the right time to address a conflict issue. And some people just like to fight. They want to fight all the time to make their point. They want to be heard. They want to be right. So some people just like to fight, and that's not healthy. I remember my grandparents were married for over 60 years, and I remember asking my grandmother, what has made their marriage so successful, and she said, "You don't go to bed mad, so work out the issue before you go to bed, or before you move on." The value of conflict. We may not like conflict, but why do we need it? So in the chat box, will you take a minute and type out what you don't like about conflict, or why we need conflict, and what would happen if we didn't have conflict? Conflict in the workplace can be problematic if it's not addressed and handled correctly. Polly, it's essential to understanding differing points of view. Yep. If we don't, like I said earlier, if we don't handle the conflict and address the issues, your employees are going to be unhappy and they're going to leave. We wouldn't get different ideas to solve problems. Yep. And that's one of the things that we have as part of our team promise. We both have ideas, and sometimes we think our idea is the correct one. But the more that we can talk, we can work to a third solution. So that's one of our team promises, is finding a third solution. Opposing viewpoints to our own might not get aired, or our own viewpoints and needs might not get aired, harming the overall mission and well-being of employees. That's right. Thank you, John. So what are the benefits of managing conflict? So that's one of the things that we talked about, is being able to get to that third solution and understanding other people. And it's good for your employees to be able to express themselves and to share their ideas, because that makes them feel more valuable. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is one of the profiles within the Everything DISC family of profiles. So for those of you who are not familiar with DISC, it's a personality assessment, but we have a whole suite of profiles relating to different priorities. So the first one is mainly the basic one. It's Everything DISC Workplace. And that's a good one to get the language going in your company or in your department, is understanding what the DISC is, the DISC, what the priorities are for you and for your other people, and how to work with them better. Management is a one-to-one profile, so it's understanding how you manage people, and then you can also compare it to one of your employees, so it will help you understand how to manage them better. The work of leaders is a leadership profile. It's for the whole company or for your whole department and how you lead. It will help you better understand your effectiveness. The 363 for leaders is a 360 feedback, 360-degree feedback, but they've added 3 more areas at the end. So there's 3 additional areas for improvement for leaders. So it's to help them understand where they can improve on, because it's their managers and employees and other people that give them the feedback. And then there's one for sales. So this helps the salesperson understand their style and how they sell, and then they can also understand how to read their prospects, their customers, and understand what their buying personality is like. And the new one that we're going to talk about today is productive conflict. Everything that's productive conflict just came out this year, and it is wonderful. We have used it ourselves, and we've used it with other companies, and it is such a useful, engaging tool to learn how to have conflict more productively. So like I said, it's a new assessment. It has 3 parts to it. It's really laid out as a workbook to help you understand conflict. So the first part, it helps you understand your own conflict style and others, so other personality styles. The second part helps you understand what your destructive responses are and why you respond that way based upon your automatic thoughts. And the third part, the last one, is choosing the productive responses. So we're going to talk about how you, once you get to an automatic thought that's destructive, you stop, reframe, and then ask some questions to come up with a more productive response. So in your profile, the other thing I wanted to bring up too is there are a lot of conflict profiles out there, or assessments, and this one differs. Well, one of the most popular ones that people may be familiar with is the Thomas Kilmann conflict resolution tool, and it just talks about resolving conflict, where this is different because it's helping you understand your conflict style and how you behave towards conflict, and understanding from the inside out and how you can deal with conflict with other styles. So this is a different type of tool. So what is conflict? So on page 2, in every everything DISC profile, it starts with an introduction, and then on the other corner, it has Cornerstone Principles. So each one has Cornerstone Principles that is based upon the research that they've done. So what is conflict? A difference of opinions involving strong emotions. So the Cornerstone Principles, to help you understand the basis for the profile and their findings, and there's no right or wrong answer. That's the most important thing. There's no right or wrong answer. This is based upon how you answer your questions. The other advantage of the Everything DISC profiles is that it's based upon adaptive testing. So that means that based upon the way you answered a question will determine your next question or group of questions. So it is adaptive, and this is what makes it so much more effective and factual. So the Cornerstone Principles for the productive conflict is inevitable. Conflict is inevitable and productive. It can be productive and it's good, as we discussed earlier. It's influenced by external factors. So maybe I'm having a bad day. I've had a bad week. Before some of you came on, I mentioned to the people that were on early that my week has been very stressful. My boyfriend was in a near-death accident at work on Tuesday. So that was, it's been a stressful week having to deal with that. He's fine now, but you know, there was a couple of days there where it was very stressful. And so if I was in conflict, I would not be a good person to have a conversation with about something that I felt strongly about. But On days where I feel, you know, I'm upbeat and happy and everything, I'm going to be more patient and understanding. So conflict can be influenced by the environment around you. Conflict is in your control. You control your own thoughts and feelings, and we're going to talk about how you can do that. And then DIS creates self-awareness of others, so you're going to understand how other people behave in conflict situations. So on page, or at the bottom of page 2 is the DISC model. And for those of you who are not familiar with DISC, D stands for dominance, and those people generally are direct, tough-minded, strong-willed, and forceful. They like to, in conflict, they like to focus on logic and victory. They want to be the winners. They want to, they will overtalk you. They will force their opinion upon you so they can win. I is for influence, and that's what I am. I have some, mostly I and a little bit of S in me. But with the influence people, they're outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, and lively. So when in most situations, I'm very optimistic. It's like I know we can get to a resolution. I know it's going to be good. It's going to work out, and I get excited about it. However, in conflict, I do I'll express my feelings, and that I will share. You know, if I'm unhappy or if I like it, I will share my feelings. The S stands for steadiness. Those people are even-tempered, and they want to make sure that everybody is happy. They're very patient. They're tactful with how they present themselves and what they say. And they focus on other people's feelings, and they want to make sure that everybody is in agreement when they're on a team and deciding upon the next step. C is conscientiousness. And those people are analytical, they're more reserved, and precise. They want the detail, they want the numbers. They want to make sure that we're following the rules, because we have a employee handbook for a reason. It's got policies and procedures in it, and we're going to follow it. So they like to focus on justice and logic. They want to be fair. Okay, page 3. This page talks about your style. So what we like to have people do on this page is really personalize it, read through it, personalize it with a check mark that you agree with a statement or strongly agree with a statement. The X is not like you at all, or you disagree with it. And the question mark, maybe just not sure. Maybe sometimes, just depends on the situation. But what you got to keep in mind that when you do complete this profile, think about how you are when you are at work. So Ruby is a D, and the priorities or things that are important to her is justification, control, and being assertive. And as you can see, she does, her shading color does go over into an I, an S, and C. And all of us are a little bit of everything, but what we focus on is the strongest parts of our priorities. So Ruby's is justification, control, and assertion. And you can see with her dot location, it's at the edge of the circle, and that means she is very strong in these areas. She's not very flexible if it comes to being expressive or harmony, creating harmony on a team and making sure everybody's happy. That would really stretch her comfort level. So the closer as the dot moves towards the center, that means that you're more flexible in the other areas. So each of the different DISC, everything DISC models have 8 priorities. So with the management profile, these 8 priorities are going to be different. Sales are going to be different. So the conflict ones are assertion, expression, reassurance. The S people like harmony and stability. C is more objective, and they want to justify their thoughts and ideas. And D, they want control. So on page 4, this is where we're going to start getting into understanding your style and others in conflict. So what is important to Ruby? She feels she wants to take charge of conversations and have control. So in a meeting, you're going to know those D people when they take charge. They're going to justify their ideas and position, and they want freedom to assert their opinions directly. So they're going to be very direct. So you will know the D people, and many D people are leaders because they do have that strong level of control, but they also need to be able to understand how to work with other people. So what Ruby also values in approaches, appearing confident and self-assured, and she wants to have authority. And she will call it like she sees it. You may not agree with her, but she will tell you the way she sees it. Excuse me. She's going to want to win arguments, and she may use sharp and critical thinking skills, and she's going to use logic to solve problems, and that would be the C part in her. So what drains her energy during conflict? She wants to focus on achieving goals and the end result, but if that's not working, she's going to find it frustrating. She doesn't want to be challenged. She does not want to be, she wants to be able to interrupt and defend herself, and she will be stressed if she doesn't have control. She's going to not want to keep her opinions to herself. She's going to have, she doesn't want to be challenged, and she doesn't like to deal with people who are not like her, straightforward, and she doesn't like illogical people. She's not going to be patient if she's dealing with somebody who's not logical. Okay, on page 5, this is an overview of DISC and conflict. So it's going to talk for each style. It talks about the destructive tendencies and the productive tendencies. And another thing that I want to point out that you can think of is the D's and the I's, they tend to engage in conflict, where the C's and the S's, they restrain from conflict. They don't like it. So the dominant people, their destructive tendencies, they tend to be more insensitive and impatient. They want to win, so they're going to create a situation where they can win. They're not going to bend or be flexible, and they're going to overpower others. The productive tendencies that they have, they're going to be straightforward with their opinions. They're going to tell you. They're going to acknowledge when it gets tough. You know, if I got someone that needs to be removed from the team because they're not participating the way they should be, they're going to acknowledge that something needs to be changed. They're going to need to be removed from the team. And they usually like to get into debates, and so because they like to share their feelings. The influencers, their destructive tendencies, they're overly emotional. So I can, as an I can be emotional where it's not really necessary. Sometimes when I get so frustrated and angry, I get upset and I do get emotional. I get so emotional where I can hardly talk. And I hate that part about being that way, but that's just the way I am. Talks over others. I find myself doing that sometimes, and now that I understand that I do that, I try not to. I can be impulsive, and I don't like tension. And sometimes I have been guilty of making personal attacks. If I'm not winning an argument, or if I'm not feeling I'm doing very well in an argument and I get so angry, I will make personal attacks, which now that I understand that, I try not to do. Productive tendencies, communicates empathy. I am a very empathetic person, and I like to hear other people's ideas and, see if there's something that may be a better fit or maybe a better idea. Provides reassurance and you verbalize emotions. Providing reassurance, that's the optimist in me. I like to reassure people that, hey, that's a great idea. Let's take a look at that. Or, I appreciate your feedback. Let's look at some other ideas possibly, or see if we can work it in somehow. Productive tendencies of the S. They show flexibility. They look out for people's feelings because they want people to feel that they belong and that they are a part of the team. They want everybody to share their thoughts about a project or what they're working on, and they'll compromise because they want everybody to be harmonious and to get along. The destructive tendencies, they tend to withdraw because they don't like conflict. They give in to others because, especially if it's a D, the D will overpower them, and so they will just give up and give in. And then they'll just let the issue simmer and avoid discussing it because they just feel like that they've been beaten down and that they can't share their ideas. Now, if you've got employees like this, and keep in mind, the majority of the population are S's. So when you're managing people, think about what styles you're managing. Don't shut the door on these people because with the job market right now, people are going to leave. If employees are not feeling the need that they're needed, that they're appreciated, that they can express their ideas, they're going to go to another employer that will listen to them and that they're going to feel appreciated and understood. The C's, their productive tendencies, they will find the root of the cause of the problem. They'll sort out the issues and give people space. They'll focus on the facts. They want the facts because they're logical thinkers. So they're going to want to ask the why questions and understand why you're trying to sway them to your idea. The destructive tendencies they have, they can become defensive, use passive-aggressive tactics. So they may not want to tell you exactly what they feel or why they're angry with you. So they'll say it in a passive-aggressive way. And I found myself doing this before, and now that I understand what it is, I work very hard to not do this because it is something that bothers me. And we're going to talk more about these destructive tendencies as we move through the profile. And they tend to isolate themselves. So they want to take time and think things over. And then generally they'll overanalyze the situation if they don't have enough of the facts. So on pages 6 through 9, these pages discuss and give you ideas on how to work with other styles. So on page 6, Ruby's a D, so it's going to give her ideas on how to work with other D styles. Because, and it can be challenging, two Ds working together can be very challenging because they both want control. They're both assertive. They want to win. So, so other people with a D style tend to address issues head on. They're direct, they're blunt, they want control of the discussion, and they focus on getting the point. They are similarly interested in compelling arguments, so they can get into some heated arguments. So how can she have a more productive conflict with another D? Refrain from getting into a power struggle. So just be open-minded and allow the other person to talk and try to come to that third solution. Reflect on the situation and be willing to compromise, and take turns speaking and avoid talking over each other. So that understanding, if they both understand the D style, I think their conflict can be much more productive, but if not, look out. Okay, so conflict with the I style, they can, so when she's working with the I style, she needs to approach them informally and keep the dialogue tight. So I'm looking at the bottom of page 7. Let them verbalize their thoughts and feelings, and don't focus so intently on your goal that they feel ignored or disrespected. So make sure you have an open mind. So again, S is the most popular style. And so you're going to, when dealing with an S style, convince them of the value of differing opinions and communicate calmly with sincerity, because they do have, they're sensitive, and they want reassurance that their ideas, or that what they bring to the table, is important. And don't overpower them or dominate the discussion. And then conflict with the C style. So you're going to want to use logic rather than force to make your points, because they're objective and they want the details and the facts. Give them time and space to double check their misgivings, and be prepared for their discomfort and ambiguity. So for those of you who have completed a disc, what style are you? Like I said, I'm an I. If you can type in the chat box what style you are, or so far what you've learned going through this, what style do you think you are in conflict? Like, I'm an I, and I have some S. Steady, okay. Thank you. SI, I'm definitely a true S. Oh, good. And that's from Kristen. Joan, steady. Michelle's a DI. So there's, but when she's at work, she's a pretty strong D. So sometimes we've butt heads before, but because we understand each other's styles, we know what's important to us. Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, on page 10. Okay, John, I did this some years ago and can't recall. I still have it at home. I think maybe steady and conscientiousness. Well, John, maybe it's time to do another one. You know, they say your style doesn't change, and they may change a little bit. Kristen, did this last month with my team. 7 out of 11 are C's. Oh, okay. So, but I think your style can change a little bit, but it's going to shift probably within the same quadrant. But based upon your experience, you know, what you've gone through in life, what you've gone through at work, your personality is going to change a little bit just because of, you know, experiences that you've learned. So if you haven't done this for quite some time, it'd be interesting to do it again and to see where you fall. The other thing with this disc, using the circle, this is fairly new. This is the third generation of disc. Before, they had the disc classic, and that was a bar graph. So this has changed a little bit, and this is more in-depth and more accurate than the disc classic. Okay, I got off a little beat here. So on page 10 is a summary of disc and conflict. So it just talks about your D style. What are the goals of D? And what are the overuses? So when D is in conflict, what do they tend to overfear? And what do they, or overuse, and what do they fear? My fear is rejection, not being heard, and disapproval. And I can honestly say that is true. S's, letting people down. They don't want to let people down. They want to make the team happy, and they're afraid of someone being too aggressive with them. And they tend to be passive. So this is a nice little chart or page to hang on to so you can understand other people's styles. So a little reminder. Okay. So in the workbook, at the bottom of page 10, we ask each person to bring with them a situation, a conflict situation that they had and they wish they would have handled it better, and just to describe it. And then what impact did their disc style have on the situation? So take a minute and think about a situation and how you handled it. And then we're going to carry the situation, keep working on it throughout this profile. And sometimes people get a little concerned because of the people, if they're doing a training session and the conflict that they had was with a person in that training session. So that can be a little touchy, but we don't want to use names and maybe change the situation a little bit. Okay, page 11, destructive responses. So like I said, you start with the conflict, and then you have this automatic thought, and that's just the way we're built. Our brain works that way. We have these automatic thoughts all the time. But they lead to destructive responses. So at the bottom of page 11, there are destructive responses. Go through this page. We're going to take a minute here and go through this page. Check 3 behaviors that others do that bother you the most. And it's hard because there's more than 3 for me. And then after you do that, put a star next to 3 behaviors that you do most often. And sometimes those are the same. Like, for instance, passive aggressive. I've been known, I know I can be passive aggressive, and that drives me nuts. Now that I understand what it is, if someone else is doing that, I instantly identify that and read between the lines and understand what they're really trying to say. Arguing, what some people just don't want to stop. My 18-year-old son, he will continue to argue until he gets his way. Well, that doesn't always work, and so he gets very angry, but he will argue so much to try and wear you down. So in the chat box, can you share one behavior that bothers you the most? Like mine is finger pointing and blaming somebody else. sometimes people need to stop pointing the finger and look at the 3 fingers pointing back at them. Belittling and exclusion. Yep. Thank you, Kristen. The other thing that drives me nuts is people who are over dramatic and make a bigger issue out of something that really isn't that big. Okay, next pages. So on these next pages 12 through 17, it gives you a narrative of each destructive response and what automatic thought may lead to the response. So take a look at these. Take some time and read through these. They're really interesting. It was an eye-opening for me to understand what the automatic thought was that goes into the destructive response. So look at one of the 3 responses that you identified on page 11 and read that and see if it resonates with you. So for example, arguing. So the automatic thought that leads to arguing is, there's no way I'm going to back down because she's a D. So the other thing is keep in mind that these examples or these responses are based upon your style. So they're not generic to everybody. It's based upon your style. So with the D, they always want to win. So they're not going to back down. So, and they want you to understand their way of thinking. Okay. Recognizing automatic thoughts, page 18. So review the automatic thoughts listed here, and these are based upon the D style, and then select 3 that you're that are most common with you. So if you're a D style, you can relate to these. And then take a look at the bottom of page 18. We're going back to that situation that you brought with you to the training session, the conflict situation, and then describe what your automatic thoughts were that you had during that situation. And then what was your response, and how did your automatic thoughts influence that response? Okay, so now that we've got a good understanding of your personality style in conflict and understanding automatic thoughts and the destructive responses, now we're going to go to part 3, and we're going to talk about changing your response. So during a conflict situation, you have your automatic thought, and now we're going to talk about how you need to first step back and then reframe. And then you're going to think about some questions and then come up with a more productive response. So in January, Michelle and I were at a healthcare conference, and the lady that just is the voice of GPS, she was talking, and she was talking about life in general and her experience and stuff. And we really brought this back to this where we have to reframe. Remember when you get going on a wrong path, you can make a wrong turn. So it's recalculating. So this is basically what we do here. We're going to stop and we're going to recalculate. We're going to recalculate what our response should be. So at the bottom of page 19, it talks about stepping back from your emotions. So if you're feeling anger, frustrated, resentment, outrage, and aggression, step back and understand that's the emotion that you're feeling. So maybe you just need to let it go, and just don't keep just get in control of your emotions and anxiety. You know, if you're feeling fearful, step back and think about it. So how do you change your response? So on page 20, we talk about what you do to change your response. And I'm going to say this a few times, this does take practice, because when you're in the heat of an argument, it is so hard to actually stop talking and think, because you're so heated, your blood pressure is so high, and you're just babbling, going as fast as you can, because you want to get your idea, your thought across. You want to make them understand your reasoning. So when you stop, frame, ask yourself, is this thought actually valid or true? So the thought that you're having, is it really true? Does it make sense? Or is there an underlying reason that you're having this thought? Am I overreacting or exaggerating? It's like, really, is it that bad? Remember the little book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, because it's all small stuff. So think about, how important is it? Is there another way to look at this? Have you asked the other person why? Have you got a good understanding of why they're thinking the way that they are? You know, is there another way of doing the project and getting the same result, or maybe even getting a better result than the idea that you had? And again, this takes a lot of practice to be able to calmly stop and reframe and really think about what you're about to say. So reframing your automatic thoughts, this is on page 20 again, towards the bottom. So these are some examples for Ruby, because she's a D style. These are some automatic thoughts that D styles usually have. They have no idea what they're talking about. So she can step back, ask herself those questions, and her reframe thought would be, they're coming at this from a completely different angle than me. So, you know, that's a little more productive, or that's a different thought that can lead to a better response. Another example, if they push me, I'll push back harder. And a reframe thought would be, maybe they don't realize how aggressively they're coming across. So maybe that's when you have you're in a meeting and some people are being very aggressive and raising their voice and want to get their point across. And it's time just to, okay, let's calm down here. Let's talk reasonably about what your idea is, and let's see if we can come to a consensus here. So think about some of your own experiences. And at the bottom of page 20, you can practice your own experience and your automatic thoughts that you had during that experience, and what would have been a better thought to have. On page 21, these are more productive responses, but they're not always easy to do. Some are harder than others. Apologizing. Some people can be very apologetic, but others, they don't apologize because it's not my fault. So look at these and go through them and what resonates with you. Go through each one and say, okay, so is this easy for me or difficult? Stepping back to reflect. I usually do that quite a bit, and taking ownership of your part in the situation. I usually, if there's an issue or if there's something that's gone wrong, I will be the first to say I made a mistake. I do take ownership, and that's where, you know, people who point fingers, that drives me nuts. Giving people time and space. So those were the C's, that they need space to go through things in their mind first. Seeking an active resolution. That may not always be easy for a D because they want their own ideas to be put in place. Finding compromises might be difficult for a D because, again, they want their own ideas to work. So anyway, go through this and identify what your response would be. Okay. Now, page 22, this is your practice sheet. So you can make copies of this, keep it at your desk, and then think about the conflict situation. You're going to go through each of these steps that we just went through. So you write down your conflict situation. What were your automatic thoughts and your response? And then how did you reframe your automatic thoughts? And could you have done anything better? So there's 2 areas on this. You can make copies of it and just keep working on it. Like I said, it does take practice to be able to stop and reframe and change your thinking. So again, you got the conflict situation, your automatic thought and response, reframing, keep practicing. So today what we talked about was identifying what causes unhealthy behavior. We went through the part 1 with your personal insight, so understanding your own reactions and others' reactions. We explored the healthy behaviors to resolve conflict, the personal change, seeing yourself through others' eyes, catching yourself, so reframing, recognizing more productive responses, and understanding others' reactions based upon their styles. And conflict is essential for effective communication. Like we said, it allows the company and people to grow and to feel more appreciated, and it's good for your culture. Using DISC in your culture is good because you have that common language, understanding each other's styles, and creating empathy and trust. So with this program, you can schedule Michelle as a keynote or a training session. She has done quite a few of these training sessions, and the responses have been phenomenal. It's very helpful in creating a more productive culture. If you would like to try this assessment for yourself or for your team, most of the time it's $90 a person, or generally the retail is $90. But you know, I'm doing this webinar by myself, and Michelle is going on vacation. So between you and I'm going to offer it to you for $82 a person. But don't tell her. And if you do have a larger team, we do have quantity discounts available as well. With a profile, with any of the DISC profiles, you can do a team report so you can see where everybody falls on the diagram, if they're D, I, S, or C. And you can also do a comparison report. So you can compare your working style with a coworker. Maybe you've never worked with somebody, or maybe you're having a problem. We've got one client that there's a couple people that they are different styles, and they have quite a bit of conflict. So they've gone through this, and they're understanding how to better work with each other based upon each other's stressors and things that encourage them. So we have upcoming webinars, November, December. Michelle will be here for August. November, Stop the Noise. December, Discover Strategies to Get Along and Get Things Done. And this is going to be based upon the Everything DISC Workplace Profile. And based upon a survey we did a couple months ago, the majority of people would like shorter webinars. So starting in January, we are going to have 3 webinars, only 30 minutes long, because we know your time is valuable and we appreciate the time that you do spend with us. So we are shortening them beginning in January of 2019. So January 18th, Inspirational Leadership. February 15th is the 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team, and that is based upon Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So if you have a team that is dysfunctional, this is a great webinar for your whole team to sit in on. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. If you would complete the survey at the end, that's the Inspiring Solutions survey, and give me some feedback. I don't do these very often, so I do appreciate any feedback I can get. And also, we like your comments and suggestions for future topics. So thank you again for joining me, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next month.